Word from the Lord. Today we're going to talk from a passage. This is a familiar passage, and I like to go to familiar passages. And it's out of Matthew chapter 8 and about the storm. And we're going to start at verse number 23. It reads like this. And when he was entering into the ship, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea, inasmuch that the ship was covered with the waves. But he was asleep. And his disciples came to him, and they awake him, saying, Lord, save us, we perish. And he said unto them, Why are you so fearful, O ye of little faith? He arose and rebuked the wind and the sea, and there was a great calm. But the men marveled, saying, What manner of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him? I want to talk for a few moments about how to get out of a storm. Everybody always talks about being in a storm, going through a storm, I'm in a storm. But how do you get out of a storm? How do you ever thought about this? How do I get out of this? The thing is that all of us have storms, and all of us be in storms. Storms are around us, in and out. But how do I get out of a storm? One of the things that in the text is the storm just arose. You know, even though Jesus was there, the storm just arose. Storms come up all the time. You don't know where they're coming, when they're going to show up. They're just there. Now, I want to talk for a few moments about how to get out of a storm. Number one, recognize. This is the first recognize. Recognize that the storm is over your head. It's beyond you. Stop trying to go into the storm and say, you know what, I can handle this storm. No. Recognize, first of all, that the storm is beyond you. It's beyond my capabilities. It's beyond my powers. Recognize that. The disciples needed to recognize the storm is out of control. And when you do that, then you're saying, this is too much for me. Everybody in life got some situations where it's just really too much for you. And I know you're smart. I know you got papers on the wall. I know you're brilliant. But there's some stuff can come up in life that you just can't handle. And just go ahead and recognize it. Recognize that my storm is too much for me. The second recognition I want to talk about, recognize who you're with. They had to recognize who they were with. You know, when you get caught up in a storm, sometimes you forget that Jesus is on board. Jesus was on board, but they couldn't recognize who they were with. You know, they had more faith in the storm than they did Jesus. They started looking at the clouds and looking at the billows and feeling the wind and said, look at this storm, look at this storm. And they forgot about that Jesus is on board. Sometimes in life, stuff can come up and these loads and these heavy burdens get out on you, and you kind of forget about, who you're riding with, who's on your ship, who's in your life, and you start looking at the storm. Take your focus off the storm and put them on the person that you would. Recognize that Jesus is on board with me. He's in the storm with me. Recognize that God is still there. The third recognition is that recognize Jesus has power over your storm. Realize that he has the power over your storm. Until you can recognize that God has more power than your storm, you'll always be in a storm. I need to say that again. Until you recognize that he's bigger than your storm, you're always going to be in the storm. They come to him because even though they didn't have enough faith, they recognize he's God. We're going to go, Jesus, don't you care if we perish? Recognize that he is larger, he's bigger, he's more powerful than your storm. Now, recognize that he's God. And when you do that, Lord, preach Fontaine, if you do that, I guarantee you, that's the formula for getting out of a storm. Recognize that it's bigger than you. Recognize who's on board with you. And recognize he's bigger than your storm. And I guarantee you, you will get out of your storm.
My life. And sometimes it's hard to tell the night from day. Still that hope that lies within is reassured as I keep my eyes upon